Greetings, netizens of YouTube. It has come to my attention that press standards have become somewhat slippery in recent years, alongside the general culture of dumbing down. I will refer you to a recent case that Gamergate have pointed to regarding the demonization of gamers and give my opinion on what is really happening. Then I will address Gamergate and media bias directly. The article in question was kindly shared to me by a Twitter follower who I won't embarrass here, appeared in the British Independent. The title: Study finds that violent video games may be linked to aggressive behaviour, does not seem overly committed. Nevertheless, the article links video gaming with violence. I won't bore you with a detailed dissection, but we can note the subtitle. Psychologists have confirmed that playing violent video games is linked to aggressive and callous behaviour. And the ending, which appears to backpedal. The psychologists identified a number of shortcomings in the literature, including a failure to look for differences in the behaviour of boys and girls who play violent video games. They also criticised a lack of research on the effects of violent video games on children younger than 10, or their impact over the whole course of a child's development. Not entirely convincing. On the face of it, what we have here is an article lending credibility to Gamergate's argument that the media is willing to use any study or report they can find to attack gamers. Looking a little deeper, I found the original report, which was published last Thursday, the 13th of August, on the American Psychological Association's website, linked in the low bar. To begin with, we should consider that a report published on Thursday on a less important topic may not be picked up until the following week. It's tempting to believe that editors may have waited for the SPJ Airplay event to be held before publishing, with the topic of gaming being more current. That is the usual method. But the likelihood is that editors had bigger fish to fry in making multiple decisions regarding their front pages and most visited topics. We can see here that Sky News published the same report before the Independent with an even more inflammatory headline: Study: Violent video games leads to aggression. Balanced out by the subheader, pro-gaming groups denounced the finding because of a consistent relation between violent games and increases in aggressive behaviour. In the body of the report, however, Sky managed to make gamers look juvenile with an unsourced quote. Pro-gaming groups have denounced the findings, saying that the psychologists who carried out the research are known anti-gamers and were selective in the studies that they deemed relevant. This is poor. An unnamed group, a quote of anti-gamers from the unnamed group. Some might speculate that the journalist in question conjured the sentence from his imagination. Finally, we had the Daily Mail getting in on the action with their own alarmist headline. Violent video games do trigger aggressive behaviour, decade-long review claims. However, as you can see, the Daily Mail earns extra points this time for citing a previous study from last year. My own opinion on the subject and other matters is clear. I don't believe there is a causal relationship between gaming and violence, and I never have. As a gamer, I have played all kinds of games. Of course, my own experience is hardly relevant to the debate, but I was playing Soldier of Fortune and Manhunt long before the opportunist developers of Hatred created their repetitive and unoriginal game. Judge for yourself whether this has affected me. Point is, I am completely and utterly opposed to wanton or casual violence in real life, but gaming is fantasy. This means I'm in agreement with Gamergate on this issue. Well, yes and no. This is an example of lazy journalism, and it does push forward a viewpoint that I strongly disagree with. Indeed, in Sky News' report there may have been somewhat malicious motivations in their description of their unnamed source. But what we are seeing in this particular case is not some liberal or progressive media conspiracy against Gamergate. The Independent is now actually owned by a Russian billionaire oligarch. What we are witnessing is something known in the trade as churnalism. It works like this. I'm employed as a science editor at the Independent. Either I or somebody under me has accessed international news agencies scanning for information on science. If I deem that there is enough information there and that the story is newsworthy, then I rewrite the original agency report, add some of my own material, and send it to the news editor to see if he will run the piece. Obviously, this varies from one media outlet to another, but more often than not, the less resources the media has, the more likely they are to churn. Objectively speaking, an article of this type that contains multiple named sources with references to previous studies, for example, is higher quality journalism, regardless of whether I agree with the original study or not. An article that is lifted from a news agency such as Reuters, where a few sentences are rearranged and some generalized statements added, is churnalism. I don't have inside knowledge, but my bet is that the writers at The Independent don't have the resources that Sky News, owned by Fox, or the Daily Mail does. Which brings me to my next point. When I searched for the story on Twitter using the Gamergate hashtag, I found dozens of references to the Independent story, one reference to the Daily Mail story, and none on Sky News. Indeed, when you consider the fact that the Independent newspaper has one of the lowest circulations of any national newspaper in the UK, and that it ranks outside the top 10 of international English news websites, why would anybody even refer to it, rather than the most influential media such as the Daily Mail, the most popular English language news website in the world? That's a topic for another day, but I will say this. It's clear that the Gamergate hashtag has unfavoured media that are attacked in a dogpile style and retweeted over and over, while other media outlets are largely left alone. If pushed, Gamergate's general counter to this is that they were attacked first. However, this is an empty argument. If the movement is to lecture others about ethics and bias, but to ignore negative stories written in right-wing publications, for example, and to almost exclusively only attack liberal ones, this shows that the ethics and bias argument is empty. It appears that what some really want is to attack the media they perceived that has attacked them. That's not concern about journalism standards or bias. That's called petulance. Some state that a movement that has had such unpleasant beginnings can never hope to recover in the eyes of the mainstream. My opinion is that the energy which Gamergate stimulated can still bring something to the table, if it is directed towards the concerns of ordinary gamers, rather than becoming some kind of political crusade. Alas, I do not see that happening, which is why I think it will continue to fade.